Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another show this morning. My name is Brear, and welcome to episode 44 of the 11FS FinTech Insider Breakfast Show. In this show, we bring you the best and the brightest from around the fintech and banking landscape every single weekday, straight into your homes at 8:30 BST. Today, I am really thrilled to be joined by Jamie Heaslip, who is former Ireland Rugby Union captain, all-round rugby union legend, I have to say, and current head of branding and marketing at Flender. This morning, what we're going to be doing is talking about how the Irish FinTech scene is shaping up, what's happening in the SME lending space, and Jamie's journey to Flender. Jamie, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us. How are you doing this morning?
I'm very well, David. Thanks for having me on. I'm as I said to you offline, I'm a bit of a fanboy, so apologies if I get giddy being on the show. But I usually at this time of the day, I don't know if you can see behind me, I have a ski erg, and I'm usually banging out about 15 minutes on that, listening to either your morning show or one of 11FS's either marketing ones or fintech podcasts. So bit of a fanboy, so delighted to be on.
Well, we're definitely going to meet in the middle. I'm in absolute awe of all of the things that you've done, I have to say. So, I think this is going to be a really good fun one, I have to say. But for everybody who doesn't know, and I kind of gave you a bit of a build up there, but give us a bit of your background, because your sporting career and actually what you've done as a businessman, after sporting life is pretty impressive. So, start from the beginning. Talk us through your background.
I'm the son of an army man. My dad is a retired brigadier general and in the Irish Defence Forces. And I came out of college after doing medical engineering with zero interest in becoming a medical engineer, and was very lucky to be offered a contract to go play professional rugby here in my home province of Leinster. And I started professionally in 2005. If I'm honest, I was probably professional from about the age of 15. And I retired because of injury in 2018. And my contract is actually meant to run until June of this year. So, but the upside of retiring early was that it gave me the push I probably needed to, and made me do things that I wouldn't have done as quickly when I finished up. And I ended up kind of finishing up and going to work for Google full time for a year here in their headquarters. But throughout that whole time, I invested in lots of different businesses across multiple verticals. I've only exited one of them, and that was in January, where one of them called Pointy was acquired by Google. But right now, I'm spending a lot of my time in that fintech space, like you mentioned with Flender.
Fantastic. I mean, it's interesting. I'm saying to you offline, we had Damien Hughes on a couple of weeks ago, who has sort of written lots of material about sports people and the transition from sports to business. I'm a big believer that sports people make really good business people, because I think team and working as a team and everything that kind of comes with that is such a help. How have you found that transition from the sort of sporting career where you put everything on the line on the game, and then it's back to training, to business where there's sort of a constant challenge that's there? Have you found it an easy transition?
Yes and no. I come at it from a very different perspective. All right. If I'm in a conversation these days, I'm not coming from the point of view of having, 10, 15, 20 years experience of actual, sector specific experience. I'm coming from a very, very different world of high performance, high stress, kind of high demand teams, that is tested on a daily and weekly basis. Like, the competition is there all day, every day. But in a really weird way, my engineering degree before that almost kind of made me learn about process, and then the world of sport made me learn about the importance of teams and trusting people. So, like, particularly in a rugby field, each role has a very specific type of skill and role, and you get very comfortable with, okay, everyone has a certain standard, but also giving them autonomy to kind of stay in their lane and do what they do, because I can't do it and I got to trust them to do it. But then, as I became more of a senior player and leader in the group, how you how you get people pointed in the right direction, the importance of values, the importance of culture of a team. And then, post finishing, when I went into Google, I kind of learned about how you can do that and apply it at scale. So it's given me a couple of different experiences that I'm now trying to kind of curate and put together, and add that experience, like I said, from a very different perspective when I'm working with teams, working with startups, and working with companies in the tech sector.
Fantastic. And it's a really, really interesting transition, I have to say. I mean, for everybody who's watching this on LinkedIn, fire over any questions that you've got as you've got them. What we'll do is we'll weave them into the conversation as we go. But thank you so much for everybody for joining us this morning. I mean, tell us a little bit more about Flender then, Jamie. It's a really interesting proposition, a really interesting idea. Where did it really come from?
For me personally, how I came about it was like a lot of things. I had a problem that needed sorted, and I co-own 2 pubs in Dublin. I don't know why I'm pointing like that. It's not like they're in my house, but
although right that would make for an interesting location, wouldn't it? For sure.
But I co-own 2 pubs in Dublin, and basically, on the first pub, we kind of bought this building beside it, and we were expanding into it, and we went to go get a loan for doing it up, and it was just it just took forever. The process was really annoying. Even though the bank that we were with, we had our mortgage with them, we had our banking account, all our banking was done with them. It took us 6 or 8 weeks to get an answer from them. You know what I mean? And I was just like, surely in this day and age, I was like, it's got to be quicker. And anyway, after that process, I went digging, and I came across Flender. Now, the only other really alternative was at that time was Linked Finance. They'd been around in the Irish market since 2013, but Flender was coming at it from a little bit of a different perspective. But I went down that rabbit hole of learning about fintechs, learning about digital lending, those different platforms that are out there, the options, and that whole peer-to-peer space was just I realized in Ireland it was quite underdeveloped. I mean, I think in the UK, not in the UK, sorry, in Europe in general, I think 50% of SME lending is done through non-pillar banks. So I was like, oh, okay, in Ireland it's 10%. Okay, that means there's a massive opportunity there. And then when I actually used it, I used it as being a retail lender. So I was putting money on the platform, lending to businesses, getting a really good return. They were loving the process because, they were getting funded in 24, 48 hours, as opposed to, 6 to 8 weeks to get a yes and another 2 weeks to draw down. And I just think in general, banking has changed dramatically since the last recession, and SME lending has been transformed. It's almost like banking is being broken up, and you're getting, different fintechs are stepping into different areas and specializing it, because we're now of a generation where we like everything to be done seamlessly, digitally, online, fast, almost immediate, and banks aren't built in that way. So when I leaned into it, and got partnered up with the team in 2017, I invested in 2017, and they've kicked on since then. And although it's a tough period now, like a lot of companies, they've been doing really, really well. And it's been really interesting I just love people who ask the question, why? Like, why did we do it that way? And I hate when someone says, well, that's the way it's always been done. And then, so that's why I love people who come up with ideas of challenging that and better serve customers.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting that sort of peer-to-peer lending model, and particularly for SMEs, like you say, in this period of time is so important, isn't it? The whole market has been underserved, as you say, for well over a decade. But I mean, in this period of everything that's happening with COVID, then it's even more critical that these guys get the support.
Perspective, like to them, it's to do a deal over €1 million is the same to do it for like 200,000 or 100,000 in terms of effort and time. So, they tend to focus on the bigger ticket items. But there's still like in Ireland anyway, like SMEs are the beating heart of the Irish economy. And I think that's the same around the globe. And for all of us to come out of this crisis, it's going to be SMEs that are the ones that bring us through, but they're being underserved. and we're trying to play our role. There's loads of other alternative asset finance companies in Ireland that are doing the same thing in their own kind of field. If it's asset-backed financing, if it's property-backed financing, there's all sorts of different invoice discounting, all those different models. But you're right. I just think they're being underserved, and I think they're in Ireland anyway. You get a sense where they don't know about it. So there's a big education push here. But once you educate them and once you kind of show them how to do it online, because a lot of them tend to be quite traditional, once they do it once, it becomes like, it's that eureka moment for them. And I think you see that with anything. Like I was with my mother-in-law last weekend, and I was showing her Revolut, for example. You know what I mean? Because I got something for her, and she's like, "Oh, I'll pay you back." I was like, "Oh yeah, just Revolut across to me." And she was like, "What's that?" You know what I mean? But then I explain it to her, show it to her, and she has that light bulb moment. So we're trying to do that with SME lending.
Well, like you say, it's interesting if you people then realize how easy it is, then they start to get into digital or e-commerce in like a major way, don't they? But I mean, how have you found this period? Obviously, with everything that's happening with COVID, I guess let's start with personally, but because I guess nobody's been able to get out at all. How have you found working remotely?
So I've been very lucky. I tended to work quite a bit from home prior to ISIS and prior to kind of lockdown. And I'm also very lucky where I live very close to the beach here in Dublin. So we can, if we need a walk, we can go walk on a massive beach. So we're good in that regard. And I have some training equipment at home. So a couple of things that I need, which is like headspace to go walking and training sorted, and I had my home office set up. So we were good in that regard, very lucky to be in that regard. But I think, it was funny. I had a lot of people on to me because they were struggling with working from home and putting kind of routines in place and processes in place and how to, where they draw the lines between, okay, when does work finish and kind of home start, especially when they might not have had a designated space as such to work. And that's been tough for people. But I've worked with a couple of people in terms of getting routines kind of in place and different triggers in place so that you kind of know when the day starts and when the day stops, I think that's key. But we've been good. But I won't lie to you, I am absolutely dying to get back out there and meet people, because I love engaging with people. And while this is great, there's nothing beats sitting down with your buddy, either having a coffee or having a beer.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, especially it's sort of a bit of an unended thing, isn't it? We were having the conversation at 11FS yesterday about when we really think we'll be back in the office in London. It's somewhere between September and January. We just really don't know. So as you say, the processes for working from home are not just get you through the next couple of weeks. Arguably we're talking about a few more months of this. So like you say, having space, and I mean, I'm in a similar situation to you. I live out in the sticks and in Norfolk, so beach and woods and everything are on tap. But like you say, it's a lot harder if you're in a flat in central London with nowhere to go. It's a much more difficult proposition, isn't it? But I mean, how have you guys?
My brother actually lives he lives just beside Tower Bridge, and he's got two twin 3-year-olds, and wow. So he now he's lucky. He lives in a nice part that has a nice balcony, but I think he's the only one who's been outside of the house in the last 8-10 weeks.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So, his wife and his 2 kids, I don't think if they have, I could count it on one hand the amount of times they've left the apartment. And it's a lot tougher, a lot different. But I think we'll all learn a lot. But like you said, we've swung major one way in terms of working from home. We're all working from home all the time right now. But I don't think we're going to swing all the way back where we're working all the time again in the office. I think there will be a happy medium. It might be 2, 3, 4 days in the office and you work the rest from home, or it'll be quite fluid. I think. I don't think anyone's ever it's going to operate almost like a gym, isn't it? Where your office is never actually going to be able to manage all the staff being in at the one time.
Yeah, it's definitely going to change things on that part for sure. I mean, how have you found it for customers as well? I know at Flender, you're doing a lot to try and help your customers as much as you can through this period. But how have you found the sort of change in the demands from those guys?
It's been really, really interesting, if I'm honest, David. Like it's kind of gone through like a bit of a roller coaster in terms of the sentiment and the actions of our customers on both sides, because we've got retail lenders, so that's like you or me want to put money on the platform and essentially lend it to other companies, and then you've got the borrowers and the companies coming to us. And when it all kicked off, or when it was looking like it was kicking off, we actually had massive surge of companies coming to us because they want to kind of contingency funds. They wanted to get confirmation before they draw down, and have cash in place because no one knew what was going on. And then that kind of quietened down a little bit, not a whole lot, but that quietened down a little bit as people hunkered down, managed their cash, and kind of were waiting to see what policies were going to come in place and what the roadmap looked like. But then we saw an uptick in the retail lending side of people coming to our platform, signing up, putting money on it because they had more disposable income. And we think they wanted to invest in good companies and go through the proper credit checks. And it was quite interesting to see. And that's actually maintained because, in fairness, look, you're getting on average anywhere 8 to 10% return on your money. You're not going to get that on your current account, right? It's going to be hard to get that. Now, a little bit of risk. Our default rate is 1.1%, so there's an element of risk there. But it's pretty good terms in my book. But anyway,
definitely is. I mean, like you're saying, in comparison to savings accounts right now, that's a factor of nearly 8-9 times what you would get from a current account, right?
Yeah, and that's another thing where we have to you almost have to try and break a habit of people, and you see the demographics that are swinging more to being comfortable to do that. But the whole process, either you're a borrower or you're a lender, like we don't have to see anyone. So in essence, Flender is up to be is end-to-end digital. While we miss being in the office, like all the teams have all used, we're either using HubSpot to kind of track different things on that side. We're using the whole Google suite, business suite for docs and sheets. So we all share that thing, Hangouts. So we're all, bar actually being in the office, we're all virtual, work seamlessly, and clients are liking it. It's in a weird way, it's kind of forced customers kind of get a bit more accustomed to it. And while it was strange at the start of the crisis, it's definitely helped us in terms of showing the benefit of it. And in fairness, showing you the benefit of the time that you save. You can get on a call, you can get on a Hangout, get on a Zoom call, but all you got to do is scan those documents through. It's all done from your home, and it's been great. It's been challenging. On the one challenging part has been an element. We have institutional lenders who, for a little while, kind of they went hiding because they didn't know what the landscape was, how it was evolving. So they kind of just pulled back a little bit, but they're starting to come back into the market now. That different markets across Europe are reopening. We started our reopening on Monday here in Ireland, and it's going to be phased out now every 2-3 weeks. There's going to be sequences of that as long as the cases and that keep going down.
I have some really interesting conversation over on LinkedIn. Some good questions for you. So I'll sort of see if we can answer a few of these now. But so one from Chris Skinner saying, tell us a little bit about the Irish FinTech community. I mean, you've sort of immersed yourself in FinTech over this period of time. Have you found the community when it comes to FinTech impactful in Ireland? I mean, it's an interesting one, I guess. I mean, we had Patrick Collinson on from Stripe on FinTech Insider last year. It's interesting. He's probably gone from, admiring you to you going, what can you learn from him? It's quite an interesting sort of mix there. I mean, definitely he's one to reach out to for some tips, right?
I'm just a fanboy of him as well. What they've done, their headquarters is only down the road from me. It's pretty impressive what they've done, but the community in general is really, really good, David. Like they come together, like we kind of come together under this umbrella organization of the independent finance providers of Ireland. And we've been lobbying actually because what happened in Ireland was we had this kind of COVID-19 fund by the government, but it wasn't it only went through pillar banks. It only went through regulated operators. It's peer-to-peer lending isn't regulated here in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Although we're regulated in the UK and we're pro-regulation here in Ireland, it's not regulated. So they're quite reluctant to allow us to have access to that, because the problem what was happening was those funds weren't getting to the SMEs. Because while our strategic bank here in Ireland might go, yes, you qualify, it won't go through the same, it won't go through the pillar banks. Pillar banks will say no.
Well, and like you say, even if they said yes, the speed in which that money is dispersed to startups, there's loads of stats out there about, most startups only have 25, 26 days of capital. So to your point earlier on, if it takes like 8 to 10 weeks to try and get an application through and get the money in your bank, that business has probably gone bust already, which is just crazy.
And they're not and depending on different business models now, we're looking at businesses that are like cash positive or good businesses, right? And it's funny when you talk about that startup one, that's another Scale Ireland. They're having a battle on their hands in terms of those business models that run at a negative burn rate, and in the whole tech sector, and they're trying to grow, how they get funding for those lines. But that's for another day, David. But in terms of the fintech sector, they've been lobbying the government pretty hard in terms of getting access to those funds. And so we can, through all our different systems, we can distribute that money a whole lot quicker to companies that actually need it and qualify for it, as opposed to, like I said, going through the normal channels and getting a long no. There's nothing worse for a company, I think, than a long no. You know what I mean? Or a slow no.
Yeah, especially if it's a lifeline and they're holding on for that, and then it's they've run out of time to really sort of consider anything else at that stage, haven't they?
Yeah, and look, everyone has to play their role and have different roles to play, and it's kind of coming back to our point earlier in terms of, I'm quite comfortable pillar banks have their role. They've got you know what I mean? Fintechs have their role as well, though, and can play a pivotal role in that. I think you're seeing. You're seeing it in the UK, you're seeing it across Europe and Ireland. We're just a little bit behind in that regard. But I think one of the kind of silver linings, for want of a better word, in this crisis anyway, is that it's pushed a lot of things to the fore and accelerated a lot of things by years. Telemedicine, Zoom calls, working from home. And I think fintechs are another area where I've been accelerated a few years in terms of people getting used to it, and looking at alternative ways, digital ways of getting their financing. And Flender is lucky to be in that space, along with some other great companies in Ireland.
Mm. How was a question here from Marsha Williamson? So how is the talent pool? So obviously, if the community is getting bigger, is talent of people in the fintech space, is that getting bigger and bigger as well?
Yeah, Ireland has always been really good and lucky in terms of our education system, and basically it's free all the way to you finish college, and so you get some really good talent coming from it, right? Now the problem is, and we touched on it with the startups, is that if we don't keep funding those startups, and particularly those companies that are 2 or 3 years that are not quite at Series A level yet, but need funding, like you said, a lot of them, like I think in Ireland, Scale Ireland showed a stat of 80% of them will run out of money in 5 to 6 months. The problem with that is that they'll get hoovered up by the big corporate companies here in Dublin. Like we have LinkedIn, Facebook, Stripe, Google, HubSpot, Salesforce, Microsoft. All their European headquarters are literally within a 2-kilometer radius. And they'll hoover up all the talent, and we won't get that innovation. That's the concern. But in terms of the talent coming through, we're really lucky. We have some amazing people coming through. Our universities are all getting on board, having accelerator programs, really leaning into all the kind of STEM what's the word I'm looking for, subjects, to really push it. And being a medical engineer myself, I know the value of it, and I know how good those programs are.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. It always starts with having a good program of education to get talent through, doesn't it? But and like you say, having I mean, the story of things like the Collinson brothers as a great hero for people to kind of look up to, I think is always a great one to see. A question here from Freddie Kelly. So are there any routines that you find particularly helpful that you've taken from your days as a player into being a fintech entrepreneur? Is there anything you've sort of taken from that to almost create similar routines?
Yeah, well, the thing about routines, they kind of give you certainty, and certainty kind of gives you confidence, right? So I always used to say, like, it's not that I'm taking anything specific as in what I was doing. I just take the fact that having routines gives you confidence. So coming into a game, for example, I knew that, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, game day, Saturday, I knew what I kind of mapped out what I was doing every day. So, I tick the box, done. I knew come Thursday, Friday, I'd done all the work. I was in a really good place, and that gave you confidence. And you didn't worry too much about the outcome, because you can't control the outcome. You can control the process. And I knew I had controlled the process to a certain degree. And now look, you'll have good days, you'll have bad days on the actual match day. And that's another conversation where you get comfortable with winning and losing and learning and that sort of thing. But it's the routine. So for example, for me now, my kind of routine is like up at 6:30. I have a bit of movement stuff that I do, a bit of meditation. My daughter gets up just after 7. I take her in the morning. Then, my wife kind of comes down, and then at about 8:30, I go into my office, do a bit of a sweat session on my ski erg here or the assault bike for about 20 minutes, cold shower, coffee, and I'm at my desk for 9 o'clock and cracking on then. And then I kind of break out my day as well. So, but I know when I tick those I have that morning routine that I'm to do my best work, essentially, you know what I mean? And that's what I did in rugby. And that's kind of what I learned. It's not what I'm doing. It's the fact that I have that routine, and it takes tweaking to find out what works for you. But I think it's really important people have those routines.
Yeah, I think it's those rituals that sort of keep you as an individual, but then organizations kind of moving together, isn't it? It's really interesting. I mean, how much of you sort of say there a little bit about the sort of getting used to missing? I think it's always one of I think the most quoted sort of Michael Jordan points, which is, I mean, he missed 10,000 shots so he could score a buzzer beater. I think sports people get used to missing isn't failure, it's always learning. And I think there's lots that startup ecosystems can kind of really learn from those things.
Who was it? There was there's a guy, there's a UFC coach who came out with a book here in Ireland. John Kavanagh's his name. He's Conor McGregor's coach, and he says you win or you learn. He doesn't say you win or you lose. You win or you learn. Now, I would always say, look, it's very dangerous just to brush over the wins, because there's cracks that can be revealed. But I like where he's coming from in terms of that point of view. But you do get, like, I had two amazing coaches. I had a lot of amazing coaches, but two in particular, Joe Schmidt and Stuart Lancaster, kind of stand out. And Joe Schmidt had this philosophy of control the controllables. So that kind of comes back to that process and managing it and what you can do. And then layered on top of that, Stuart Lancaster had a philosophy of comfortable in chaos. So that was more like, okay, once you put the work in and the systems in place, you kind of get used to the chaotic environment. And that's what a startup is, right? It's chaos. It's all hands on deck doing all sorts of different jobs, but you kind of get you kind of control what you can, and then, the outcome will be the outcome. But you get used to that, and then you get used to that Monday morning honest review where it's all on video. You can't hide from it, and you accept your failures. But people don't go hard on you in the failure. Well, if you keep repeating the same mistakes, yes, they might come down on you because you're not learning. But if you make a mistake and you learn from it, then people won't come down hard on you. They know everyone's trying to do their best. And if you are trying to do your best and you're learning from your mistakes, then there is no issue with making mistakes. And you do get very, very comfortable with winning or losing, and trying things and making mistakes, sticking at it as well and learning. And that's how you kind of evolve your I used to say you evolve your craft. But it's also like any startup that has a product, iterates, keeps evolving, learning, feedback into it, and that system is and getting comfortable with it is very, very important for any company going forward, because the minute you get you think you get that competitive edge and get to the top and stand still is the minute you will be passed out by the rest of the competition.
Definitely, it's a continually moving beast, isn't it? But I think I could probably talk to you about this, Jamie, for hours and hours. But unfortunately, it's coming to the top of the hour, so we probably better let everybody get on with their busy business days. But thank you so much for joining me, Jamie. Where can people find out a little bit more about yourself and everything that you're doing at Flender?
Well, I'm across all social channels, so just Jamie Heaslip on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and then regards to Flender, just go to flender.ie, and we have everything there. You can get lending to businesses, or if you're a business, you can start the process out there. You got to be an Irish business. Sorry, I will caveat that, but you can lend from anywhere. But yeah, that's where you can find us.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations with the success of the business, and yeah, hope it keeps going from strength to strength. All right, guys, that's all we have for you this week, unfortunately. So Monday's a bank holiday here in the UK, so we won't have a show. I mean, I'm committed, but I'm not getting up on a bank holiday to come and do this, unfortunately. So so we'll be back with you on Tuesday. I'm going to be joined by Emma Jones, who is founder of Enterprise Nation. Some really, really interesting insights that they've got into what's happening in the SME space in the UK. So tune back in, same time, same place, next Tuesday for more insights like this. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much.